My name is Hassan Sorrells, and this is the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast, Shorts. There's no co-host on these Shorts episodes. We have extended the time on these shorter episodes from 5 to 6 minutes to 15 to 20 minutes for this season. This is so that these shorts can serve as introductory episodes released ahead of our weekly, longer form episodes. But don't worry, I will still let you know my observations, ideas, thoughts, or rants about the literature, philosophy, psychology, and even the theology of leadership, particularly as we prepare for the restoration of leadership and leadership principles during the next historical high in America. Why these episodes? Well, because listening to me talk about leadership for now around 15 to 20 minutes is still better than reading and trying to understand yet another business book. Even that business book that you bought with that famous person's name as the author, but you haven't applied any of the principles from that book to your leadership practices. At least not yet. According to the writer and creator of the show Yellowstone, he was told repeatedly by Hollywood executives when he was initially shopping the pitch of creating a show where most of the action occurred on a ranch in rural Montana that, quote, "We," meaning the Hollywood executives, "won't pick up a show that pitches stories from rural areas. It's been that way since at least the 1970s. We only pick up stories that we can market to the urban areas of the country." Close quote. If this is an accurate anecdote, and memories of pitch meetings in Hollywood are notoriously full of holes, and Hollywood hagiography is its own form of storytelling and myth-making, what it means is that for at least 3 generations in American popular media culture, the myth of the city as the only place where, quote-unquote, the action is, has been actively marketed over the reality or the realities we all live within our various lives. The reality is that the largest splits in American society are not based on race, class, social status, or even perceived cultural cachet. The largest splits in postmodern American society that have been nurtured for various reasons by the powers that be are between people who live in rural areas and have to deal with the ruthlessness of nature and the remnants of the natural world, and the people who live in the cities and must face the ruthlessness of human arrogance, overweening hubris, and technological pride. Such is as it has always been. And I quote from the book of Genesis, "Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left." And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plains of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plains of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. John Steinbeck, our author that we are going to cover this week on the podcast, was born in California's Salinas Valley in 1902. His father, John Ernst Steinbeck, served as Monterey County Treasurer. John's mother, Olive Hamilton, a former schoolteacher, shared Steinbeck's passion for reading and writing. Steinbeck lived in a small rural valley, no more than a frontier settlement, set in fertile soil about 25 miles from the Pacific coast. While the valley and the coast would serve as settings for some of his best fiction, he spent his summers working on nearby ranches, including the Post Ranch in Big Sur. He later labored with migrant workers on Spreckels sugar beet farms. There he learned the harsher aspects of the migrant life and the darker side of human nature. Steinbeck graduated from Salinas High School in 1919 and went on to study English literature at Stanford University near Palo Alto, leaving without a degree in 1925. He traveled to New York City, where he took odd jobs while trying to write. When he failed to publish his work, he returned to California and worked in 1928 as a tour guide and caretaker at Lake Tahoe, where he met Carol Henning, his first wife. The anti-Hemingway, Steinbeck was part of a long line of social realist writers, particularly social realist writers in a post-World War I era in America, that included Upton Sinclair, William Faulkner, and much later on in the century, a favorite of our show, Joan Didion. For Steinbeck, though, there was a difference between him and all these writers. He started off as a poor writer, living off the largesse and goodwill of others. He did not, much like Sinclair, Faulkner, and Didion, start with some money. He never doubted he would be a great writer, and he was eventually recognized with a Nobel Prize for Literature in 1962. But because he had a hard-scrabble path to becoming a famous writer, he always wrote about the people, the situations, and the realities of life he actually saw. Realism, not from a social engineering perspective, the perspective of creating a new man, but realism from the perspective of man as he is. Through books like Cannery Row and Tortilla Flat, all the way through his two magnum opuses, The Grapes of Wrath and, of course, the book we are going to be covering this week on the show, East of Eden, Steinbeck defined how rural America, and even the growing urban areas of America in the early to middle 20th century, thought about itself in opposition to or in examination of the exegesis of the city. According to the University of Michigan Center for Sustainable Systems, quote, by 2050, 89% of the U.S. population and 68% of the world population is projected to live in urban areas. 89% of a projected population of 371 million people. And that's just 25 years from now, if trend lines continue and population growth doesn't stagnate in America. What do these numbers mean for stories and culture, though? Well, I think one thing that it means is that writers and creatives like John Steinbeck are going to have to journey further and further afield from the urban centers to tell stories that the rural minority will value. It also means that, while the writer of Yellowstone is currently enjoying a cultural moment, him and Paramount apparently own the network together, that moment will pass and probably not make much more of a dent, or much of a dent, in the overall thinking, the overall understanding of myth, the overall cultural cachet people have about what America actually is. After all, urban stories and urban myths are a part of the fabric of the American myth, all the way back to the Boston Tea Party. However, with as hard as the future John Steinbecks are going to have to work to break through the urban cultural storytelling noise, and it will be a cacophony everywhere from TikTok to YouTube and everywhere in between, it might make sense for those creatives and thinkers and writers to begin thinking critically about how much of the postmodern mythos about the sexiness, desirability, and victoriousness of urban living is really just marketing by Hollywood executives with a directive to follow from their immediate bosses, all the while sidestepping the sins of Sodom. And well, that's it for me. Are you ready to elevate your leadership journey through exploring the wisdom of the ages? Subscribe to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast on all major podcast platforms, including Apple iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube Music. You can also find us everywhere else podcasts are available. If you find value in our episodes, please leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. We need those reviews to grow, and it is truly the easiest way to help other leaders and lovers of literature discover this show. And thank you for your support.